I'm Wolfie Baby, and welcome to my third video. It's been a while, a lot of things going on in my life. In a couple days, my daughter gets married, and I wanted to get a video out real quick because she has requested that I cut my hair. And I gotta do it. See, most of my life I really did have sort of like a neat military type haircut, getting it as fashionable as I could. But if those of you that know the history of long hair in the 60s know that it was a bit of a rebellion against the government, against being told what to do, against being sent to useless wars, and having the government tell you what to do. So we'll leave it at that. But I wanted to wait for a special occasion to cut my hair, but it's been 4 years. Anyway, this video I'm going to dedicate to a seller on eBay that has just elevated the quality of my Beatle collection, which through the years has become quite extensive. In fact, like way back there where all those albums are kind of pulled out, that's my Beatles section. I have 4 cubicles. 3 of them are filled with Beatle records, and one of them is just solo Beatles and bootlegs. But I'm going to show you 12 albums and tell you about one that's on the way from Mr Stickermania from Louisville, Kentucky. I'm sorry, I'm doing this sort of like on the cuff, fast, and Mr Stickermania on eBay has a couple numbers after his name, but usually if you do the search Mr Stickermania, do that, or on YouTube, and you'll find him. He does weekly streams of the stuff that he gets, and I found out about him really through Rachel's Ghost VC channel. I bought stuff from him, never had a problem. I mean, if there's ever any issue, he's the man who will take care of it. He stands behind everything he sells. When he tells you that something is mint or mint minus, believe it. When he says something sounds extraordinary, holy cow. So there was a record I was interested in, but it's been heavily bootlegged, so you don't know what you get unless you buy it from a reliable source. Or maybe even the person who sells it to you won't know
that they have a counterfeit.
My collection started going up when I got this album. In the Shrink, the Beatles Christmas album. This is a US copy. Some of these albums you could really got to research, find out about. Just real quick, this one has something to do with Ringo's eyeballs. I think you're supposed to see the white of his eyes there. On this photograph over here, you need to break out a magnifying glass to find out that they're standing in front of the Royal Theatre. And bootlegs copies just don't pick up on these details. So, practically unplayed, glossy. I ultrasonically clean my records, but not a scratch. Anyway, that's a nice record to have. It's the first one I bought from him. Followed that one up with the Beatles. But this is actually from behind the Iron Curtain. This is a GDR copy, the German Democratic Republic. Nice, probably informative stuff on the back, but it's in German. And there's a couple of versions of this one. Some of these photographs are have a little bit more color to them. Might even be in color. So this is a mono copy on the blue Amiga label. Now my research showed that the sleeve was printed in a GDR, but the record was actually made in the USSR. So, that's one. The Beatles Ballads. This is a 1980 release from West Germany. What's interesting about this one, this was supposed to be the original cover of the White Album. On the back it has the tracks, and hopefully I can get in there. Nice picture of them just hanging out. On the front it's cute, it has Yoko in a little bubble. Alrighty, that one is on a green Odeon label. We've got another glossy, perfect album. But there's more. Not often do you bug out about, or I bug out about, inner sleeves. A great inner sleeve. Look at that. I mean, it's advertising, I guess, books. Paul McCartney und the Wings. Die Beatles. Beatle Künstler Provocateur. John Lennon. Anyway, look at that. Nice paper too. Nice and thick. From West Germany. This is a 1968 reissue of the 1967 album, The World's Best, The Beatles. Super colorful, great photograph. It is from Magical Mystery Tour. Nice picture. On the back, a bunch of cool black and white pictures. This one came out on the SR International label. Compilation album. I'm a big fan of Australian issues. That's almost a whole other area of study because, you know, people who break it down will say, you know, there are some special audiophile grade pressings of Beatles records. In Australia, there was a law that for album cover art, it had to be locally produced. Australian artists would have to come up with their own cover. So this is with the Beatles, a rather ghostly image of floating heads. Cool. I like Australian albums, but for the most part, when you find somebody in Australia selling them, not only are they going to be expensive, but shipping costs from Australia kills it. This is an orange Parlophone label. Again, from Australia. 1972 Australian issue of the Essential Beatles. This one has a great little blurb. In the 8 years the Beatles were together, they wrote and performed many songs, songs that will live with us forever. These are 16 songs you will never want to forget. The Essential Beatles. It's the record for our generation. So it spans from Love Me Do all the way to Let It Be. I mean, you can just have fun looking at these drawings and how this is laid out. It's a timeline. Great. Baby You're a Rich Man is on there. Always like that track. Apple label. This one has quite a bit of extra rim text, made by EMI Australia Limited, Sydney, NSW. I'm presenting these albums in the order I bought them from Mr Stickermania, Frank from Louisville, Kentucky. Went into my eBay history. I hope I didn't miss any that I bought from you, Frank. This is from 1963. I believe this is actually a first press. It's was listed as something else, but geez, I think it's a first press. Going by the dead wax, the sticker here. Wait, but I could be wrong. With the Beatles. Pretty much the same picture here, different print. And this green and this gold foil thing. Just nice. I don't have to tell you guys, it's the sort of stuff that turns us on. With a red and white Odeon label. Made in Germany. As we used to say here, West Germany. From the US, a 1965 original of George Martin and his orchestra play Help and other instrumental versions of the Beatles songs by their brilliant recording director. The real fifth Beatle, George Martin. High Fidelity, United Artists, UAL. Oh, yep, thought so. Mono. Now this one's unique because how many people can say that they have an album from Israel? And a big shout out to all our friends in Israel. You know, God be with you. Stereo and mono. This is an unofficial release, but Frank said the sound on it was incredible, and I agree. Now look at this. This is well researched here. Revolution number 1, take 20. Revolution, take 13. Dear Prudence, take 1. Take 20 is 11 minutes and 32 seconds long. Awesome. Just a fun listen. And of course, a little alternate picture there of them in, what is that, St. James Park. And on the back, from Tel Aviv, and the Hebrew letters. This is the label on this one. Avitom, with a little faux parlophone in the yellow circle. Revolution. Oh, forgot to say, Revolution. Take your knickers off. I think we need Rob Walker to read that one. That's from 2010. Israel. The Beatles, Volume 3. This one is a 1979 repress of the original 1964 Mexican issue of this album. What I love about it is that the titles are all translated into Spanish. Cool picture on the back. It's a 1979 repress, but what's interesting, apparently in Mexico they still use the lime green capital labels, which as far as I know was only in use for a year or two in the very early 70s, talking like 69, 70, something like that. So I like these labels too. They're just neat. Now this one I bought it on Frank's recommendation as being a sounding of the Beatles in Hamburg, with all the normal songs that we associate with them. You know what? I just realized I'm missing one. I didn't pull one out. I also have one that I bought from Frank of Tony Sheridan. Um, it's a record I bought from him. It's a anniversary repress from the early 80s. That if it were an original, it'd be like hundreds and hundreds of dollars, but the repress looks just fine. Now this one, Beatles in Hamburg, while you have the Beatles tonight, I would bet that this girl doing George's hair, I'd bet that's Patty Boyd. But since they're in Hamburg, on the back, on the extreme right, you see Pete Best, and on the extreme left, Stu Sutcliffe, their bass player. Damn, wish I read German. It's an official Polydor release. Dead wax all matches up. The next one, I put it in the category, of a Grail record. Is the East Coast variety and the West Coast variety. I think the West Coast, now correct me if I'm wrong, the West Coast has the more natural looking colors, but they're also the hardest to peel. First State, as sold in the stores, withdrawn, most copies destroyed. Second State, it's the paste over, right? The one, it's Yesterday and Today is the album. So as we all know it, it's the trunk cover. Then there's a Third State, peeled. I've seen the question asked, how can you tell a Third State from a First State? Well, to put the slick on, they actually had to trim the edge of the record over here, so it can be verified by measuring. So this is a peel. The condition of it is tremendous, considering especially that this is a West Coast record. Now the thing is, I remember in his original listing, Frank said that it was peeled by somebody. I think I've heard the name before, but West Coast peels are much harder to do. You actually have to use chemicals because they end up with concentric glue rings. I guess the machine came down and you'd have all these glue rings and then they'd press the slick on top of it. The back, I mean, this is in nice condition. I mean, there's some aging on there, right? But this is tremendous. And this is from Mr Stickermania. But wait, there's more. Take a look at this. This is the peel from this album. Look at the edges. They're perfect. There's not one single tear on this slick. So just look. In the wild, or how can you tell a Second State? Take a look at Ringo's V-neck sweater. As I slide this paper over it, I hope that's coming through, but you can still see Ringo's V-neck through this rather thin paper. And on extraordinary copies, you can see John's head somewhere, I think it's around here. But this is the actual peel from this record, and its condition is extraordinary. So my hope is someday to get this framed with the standard configuration of the album and a slick side by side, maybe a little plaque. And again, there's more. Original inner sleeve. Now I can't tell. Natty Avery belonged to somebody, but take a look at the albums of the era. You can spot Sammy Davis Jr. Oh, it's Patsy Avery? I didn't notice that they wrote their name over here too. But anyway, records of the era. Wayne Newton. You got to get that one, Rachel. Okay. And a photocopy of the disc Music Echo magazine that came out in June 11th, 1966. This is notable for being the first public appearance of a picture of a photograph from that session. So this is a slightly different one. It's interesting. Ringo looks slightly disgusted there. Okay, so that's 12 albums, but I did mention a teaser. On the way in the mail is a grail that I've been looking for ever since I became aware of it. I've developed sources in Europe, checked their prices, but they're beyond the pale. You know, I've seen it as high as, $3,000. I've seen it for less than that, still in the thousands, for that, like VG quality. On his live stream a few days ago, Frank showed as nice a box set, as nice a copy of the Beatles' Let It Be UK original box with the pristine books. I mean, even the holder, the cardboard, the carton or thick paper holder, which everybody knows is probably the most fragile piece of it, that always tended to collapse and or sometimes disappear. The book is in there. The book is pristine. I mean, you could tell. I'll never crack it all the way open. I'll just kind of peek at it, because if you open it, bang, the pages are just going to start coming out. So anyway, that's in the mail at a price I could afford. So thank you very much, Frank. And hopefully, I mean, I've run out of room for records, so, but I know Frank will come up with something that I'll just have to have. So again, a big thank you, Frank, Mr. Stickermania. Everybody have a nice day. Take care.